everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video we're going to talk about the 144,000 because there's a new bit of information that came to light thanks to this email from John Adams. The subject line says 144,000 and he says, "Hi Jared, I came across this info recently that I wasn't sure if he had already covered regarding the 144,000. And it turns out, no, I have not covered this before. I'm surprised that I haven't come across this until now. But thankfully he sent this email, and that's why I would encourage all of you, if you have something that you think would benefit those that watch this channel, please send it my way. If I haven't covered it already, then I will share it like I'm doing right now. So he puts an excerpt from the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith, which you can find in the scripture citation index. At the very bottom here and to the right, you see where it says citation index, and then after that, library. Go to library, and then you can click on teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith. This is basically a compilation put together by Joseph Fielding Smith of different things that the prophet Joseph Smith was recorded as having said. So on page 75, look at this. Okay, this section is called Calling of 70s. Listen carefully. If the first 70 are all employed and there is a call for more laborers, it will be the duty of the 7 presidents of the first 70 to call and ordain other 70 and send them forth to labor in the vineyard until, if needs be, they set apart 7 times 70, and even until there are 144,000 thus set apart for the ministry. Okay, so some pretty interesting things. Not the least of which is the mention of the 144,000. Now, let me point this out, though. So first, he talks about, keep calling 70s until, you get to 7 times 70. And that's that famous number from the New Testament where Christ answers how many times you're supposed to forgive your neighbor their trespasses. And the answer is 7 times 70, which of course is not literal. It means you always forgive them. It's a way of saying you always forgive them. It's the Lord who determines if someone, is condemned after this life or if they're forgiven. But of us, it's required to forgive all men their trespasses. So in that spirit, it goes on to talk about, and then go even further until 144,000. So I don't know if this is an actual limit. Okay, 144,000, which I don't think so. I'm about to show you why. I think that it's probably symbolic. And I tend to think that the 144,000 is symbolic anyway, based on what we've studied already about numbers that are found in the book of Revelation, the way that Jews view numbers, how they have symbolic meanings. Numbers are ways to convey spiritual concepts. So 12, for example, is obviously associated with the 12 tribes of Israel. It's also associated with the priesthood. Okay. And anyway, I don't need to rehash all of that, but you have these interesting numbers. Now, I've never really followed too closely how the 70 work in the different quorums of 70s. So let's just do a quick overview. So first, let's go to the church website, General Authority 70s. I'm assuming this is a picture of the first quorum of the 70, with the presidency of the 70 right here, consisting of 7 presidents. General Authority 70s are church leaders called by the first presidency to be special witnesses and to assist the 12 in building up the church and regulating all the affairs and preaching and administering the gospel throughout the world. They act under the keys and direction of the quorum of the 12 apostles. In a revelation to Joseph Smith, the Lord taught, it is the duty of the 12 apostles to call upon the 70 when they need assistance, to fill the several calls for preaching and administering the gospel. found in D&C 107, verse 38. General Authority 70s are full-time in the church. They are generally released in the year they turn 70 years old and are granted emeritus status. So there's obviously something going there. I don't know if it's just to call attention to the number 70. I don't know. Remember, when we're thinking about 70, there's the concept of the 70 nations. That's a concept. I can't remember. I'm sure it's found in the Old Testament. It's been a long time since I've read it, but I've talked to Rabbi Gerfine about it in Judaism. That's basically the way that they refer to the rest of the world. You have Israel, and then you have the 70 nations, right? So anyway, continuing, like the Quorum of the 12, they travel widely to teach the gospel of Jesus Christ, to support and counsel with church leaders, and to assist in directing missionary work, humanitarian aid, temple building, family history, and other church efforts. Some General Authority 70s serve in the presidency of the 70. Others serve in area presidencies. Many 70s live near church headquarters and assist in directing important church affairs from there. Though all 70s have equal authority, some are designated as general authorities, and others are designated as area 70s. So not all 70s are general authorities. Some of them are, and others are area 70s. Let's get a little bit deeper with that. Okay, so there's this Wikipedia article called List of Area 70s of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Okay. At the April 1995 General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Church President Gordon B. Hinckley announced the creation of a new leadership position known as the Area Authority. In 1997, area authorities were renamed Area Authority 70s and ordained to the office of 70. The church announced that these 70s would become members of a quorum of the 70 based upon the geographic region to which they were assigned. Later, the title Area Authority 70 was shortened to Area 70, which is the title currently in use. Okay, so 1997, you have the third, fourth, and fifth quorums. So I suppose before this point, there were the two quorums of the 70. But I guess that, like it says here, that the idea of area 70s didn't really come into play until the third, fourth, and fifth quorums in 1997. Well, really 1995, but whatever. Sixth quorum, 2004. Seventh and eighth quorums, 2005. Ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So that's 4 at a time. That's the most so far. 2020. May 19th, 2020. Which is interesting because that's a month after the April 2020 General Conference. On May 19th, 2020, the church announced the creation of the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th quorums of the 70 to enhance quorum functionality, improve geographic alignment, and enhance cultural and language similarities among quorum members. So this is a big thing that we haven't really covered. I don't think it was really even on my radar until just now because my whole life the 70s have just kind of been confusing. But that's kind of a big deal. Adding 4 new quorums of the 70 right after the April 2020 General Conference makes you think that this is kind of a big move, probably having to do with the hastening of the work and ultimately the second coming. Let's move on. Streamlining the process in April 2023. So this is the most recent development. During the April 2023 General Conference leadership session, 61 new Area 70s were announced, and the release of 50 others that would be effective on or before August 1st were also presented. During the Saturday afternoon sustaining of the general authorities, Area 70s, and general officers, those changes were presented in groups, with the note that the names of those released and sustained could be found in the church's newsroom. Okay, so anyway, streamlining. Okay, areas consolidated over the years. So you have these different geographic regions. For example, the fifth quorum is the Brazil area. The seventh quorum is Europe Central, Europe East, Europe North, and Middle East and North Africa North areas. The 12th is the Utah area. Okay, so right now it looks like there's 12 quorums of the 70s. And then it has them all listed. It says below is a list of 303 currently serving Area 70s as of August 2023. Okay, so not 144,000 right now at one time, but this is how many there are right now. Okay. Goes all the way down here, all the way down to the 12th quorum of the 70s, or yeah, 12th quorum of the 70s. Okay, so let's get back to this. All right, so John Adams continues, this would mean that those called to be 70s are those that comprise the 144,000. I might have to, I don't know, not necessarily disagree, but I'm not so sure about that. It may or may not be. I don't know that it's necessarily definitive. I haven't heard anybody explicitly say that, because you could look at it as, okay, this is what you do. First, you have the first quorum, the 70, and then you add another one if you need to, and you go all the way up to 4 times 70, and then after that, if needs be, it gets up to 144,000. Which again, I don't know if that's to be taken symbolically or literally. But at the moment, we only have 303, so we're not anywhere near that of those that are living. Now, I do think that this is maybe a hint. I have some more things to share with you. Let's do that really quick, and then we'll get back to the email. Okay, so this is the way I'm going to do this. I have 3 different tabs pulled up for the Joseph Smith papers. The first one is Minutes and Blessings, the 20th of February to the 1st of March, 1835. And I'm in the historical introduction. Okay. So this is, it's not what's written on this page. So don't think that what I'm reading here is on this page. What I'm reading is put together by the people that made this website, the Joseph Smith Papers, which, by the way, is an official church project. I think some people have the wrong idea that this is, I don't know, put on by some private organization. It's not. It's done by the church. Okay. Zoom in. Joseph Smith also noted at a May 2nd, 1835 conference that as many as 144,000 70s could be called if the need arose, to be selected by their 7 presidents. According to Nathan Baldwin, who was designated a 70, the 70s were supposed to travel 2 together after their organizations, and many of them departed Kirtland to preach not long after they were given these blessings. Others were instructed in a May 1835 meeting to hold themselves ready to go when called upon, while still others were informed that they would be called upon when their circumstances will permit. By the end of 1835, many of the 70 had served brief missions and preached the fullness of the everlasting gospel in various states, and generally with good success. According to one account, 175 individuals were baptized in 1835 because of the efforts of the 70, who were described as, quote, worthy young men. All right, you could say virgins. That's a key concept when talking about the 144,000. Remember that virgins is also a way that you can describe someone who is chaste, not necessarily a literal virgin, but someone who is chaste, lives the law of chastity. But anyway, who were described as worthy young men, strong, active, energetic, determined in the name of the Lord to go forward and persevere to the end. So they were missionaries, essentially. Basically, what you see here is what you kind of think about when you think about modern day missionaries. Although our missionaries right now, like the ones that wear name tags and young missionaries, they're not 70s. They are elders, but they're not 70s, so they're not high priests. But 70s are high priests. Okay. Um, okay. So this is interesting. You know, they go on literal missions, and the mission is still the same today. They don't necessarily go 2 by 2, but they are still called to preach the gospel and to be missionaries, and then also do other things. Now we're gonna skip to this. This is minutes and discourse, the 2nd of May, 1835, as reported by William E. McClellan. All right. Okay, if the first 70 are all employed and there is a call for more laborers in the vineyard, it will be the duty of the 7 presidents of the first 70 to call and ordain other 70 and send them forth to labor until, if need be, they set apart 7 times 70, and even until there are 144,000 thus set apart to the ministry. The 70 are not to attend the conferences of the 12 unless they are called upon or requested to do so by the 12. All right. And then I have one more thing. History draft, 1st of January to 21st of June, 1844. And this is Joseph Smith speaking. So on the 4th of February, 1844, Sunday 4th, I attended prayer meeting with the quorum I attended prayer meeting with the quorum in the assembly room and made some remarks respecting the 144,000 mentioned by John the Revelator, shewing that the selection of persons to form that number had already commenced. Okay, so this is in Joseph Smith's diary, him talking about the 144,000 already starting at his time, that the selection had already started. Because there's a different theory that maintains that this hasn't happened yet. We have to wait for the 10 lost tribes to come from their hidden place, and then a literal 12,000 from each tribe has to be selected, and then, and only then, will we know that that's started. But that's not what it says in Joseph Smith's diary, okay? Let's go back here. Now, I want to go back to this one. Even though we read this, I want to read a little bit of this so we can get the context a little bit better. On the 20th of February and the 1st of March, 1835, the church in council assembled in Kirtland, Ohio, and 43 individuals were designated as members of the 70, an office responsible for preaching the gospel to the world and seemingly patterned after the New Testament account of Jesus Christ selecting 70 men to preach. This meeting was held over 2 days, with much of the time being dedicated to blessings. It appears that the meeting convened as a continuation of 2 previous meetings, the 14th through 15th February 1835 meeting, at which Camp of Israel participants were organized and 9 men were ordained apostles, and the 21st of February 1835 meeting at which Parley P. Pratt was ordained an apostle. The minutes of those meetings do not indicate that church members were soon to be designated as members of the 70, but at the 14th to 15th February meeting, Joseph Smith did declare that, quote, it was the will of God, end quote, that individuals who had gone on the Camp of Israel expedition, quote, with a determination to lay down their lives if necessary, should be ordained to the ministry and sent to prune the vineyard for the last time, end quote. In addition, a June 1834 revelation had explained the Camp of Israel participants would receive a blessing and an endowment. and some would be chosen to receive power to accomplish all things pertaining to Zion. Once most of the men designated as apostles had been ordained, those chosen as 70s received their ordination blessings. At this 28th of February to 1st of March 1835 meeting, 49 individuals were blessed, 43 of whom were also ordained members of the 70. Of the 49 blessed, 44 were among the 56 Camp of Israel participants recognized at the 14th to 15th February meeting. 7 men, Sylvester Smith, Joseph Young, Zebedee Coltrane, Hazen Aldrich, Levi W. Hancock, Leonard Rich, and Lyman Sherman were appointed presidents over the 70, although only the blessings to Smith and Young were given on the 1st of March, reflect that appointment. Okay, so it was kind of like, from what it seems here, the very early stages, if not the beginning of the calling of the 70, right? So this is the very beginning, laying down the rules, what they are. Oh yeah, I wanted to read this. Joseph Young, who received his ordination blessing on the 1st of March, later recalled that Joseph Smith had planned as early as the 8th of February, 1835, to designate men as members of the 70. On that date, Joseph Smith told him and his brother Brigham that he had received a revelation to appoint 12 apostles and that Brigham would be one of the 12. Joseph Smith then turned to Joseph, quote, with quite an earnestness, as though the vision of his mind had extended still further, end quote, and told him that he would be president of the 70s. Joseph Young regarded this as a strange saying, as he had heard of Moses and 70 elders of Israel and of Jesus appointing other 70s, but had never heard of 12 apostles and of 70s being called in this church before. As Young noted, selecting 70 men for a special purpose had biblical precedent. The Old Testament recounts Moses calling 70 men of the elders of Israel to assist him in leading the children of Israel, while in the New Testament, Jesus Christ appointed other 70 beside the 12 apostles to preach in every city and place whither he himself would come. The concept of 70 also existed in the broader religious culture of the time. Some biblical commentators in the early 1800s argued that the office of 70 ceased to exist upon Christ's death. It was not meant to be part of the permanent ministry. Others disagreed. For example, in 1830, Dirk C. Lansing of the Presbyterian Church appointed 70 disciples for his congregation to visit every house and family, ascertain their names, ages, habits of thinking, occupations, etc., and particularly what meetings they attend, whether the first, second, third, etc., or whether any of them attend heretical meetings, and if so, to warn them against such heinous sins. All right, so that's kind of some of the broader context. There's more, but that's very interesting that Joseph Smith would have this number in mind, in associating it with the calling of 70s. All right, so let's see if we can find out more. Let's now go to Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 1, page 157. This is Joseph Fielding Smith. This is under a section called Secession in the Presidency. Okay, so 12 stand next to presidency. In the year 1835, when the 12 apostles were chosen and their duties defined, the Lord declared that they were equal with the presidency as a quorum. That is, in the case of dissolution or destruction of the first presidency of the church, the 12 should succeed the presidency and would thus act until such a time and place as the Lord revealed that the first presidency should be again organized. And whenever the first presidency should be disorganized, it would devolve upon the quorum of apostles to set in order and direct the affairs of the church. When the first presidency is disorganized, the 12 apostles become the presiding quorum of the church until the presidency is again organized. And during that time, they are virtually the presidency of the church, the presiding quorum. Okay, now after that, how 12 are equal to presidency. If through some cause, which is not likely to arise, both these quorums should be destroyed, then it would devolve on the 70s to set in order the church, and they would become the presiding quorum. This is the law that God has revealed, and it is the only law in order of the priesthood that he has revealed for the guidance of the church in succession. You may search the Doctrine and Covenants from beginning to end, and will find no other law of succession. Okay, so there's that. Now I want to go to this. Now we're in volume 2 of Doctrines of Salvation, page 309. And it says a couple things here. Priesthood responsibility for temple work. Now, of course, the Lord says that our greatest individual responsibility is to seek after our dead. But as men holding the priesthood, our responsibility is, so far as temple work is concerned, to teach, to instruct, to persuade, to prevail upon men and women who are not inclined to take advantage of their opportunities and receive these blessings for themselves, to go into the temple where they can do this work. That is our responsibility as men holding the priesthood. It does not make any difference whether we are high priests, 70s, or elders. We are trying to place this burden especially upon the high priest of the church. The 70s preach the gospel. See? The 70s preach the gospel. They're missionaries. That is where they belong. The elders are ministers at home. The high priests also are ministers at home. And we are also trying to train them to take upon themselves this responsibility of teaching their fellow men in all that pertains to exaltation, and to help prepare them to go to the temple to do these labors in behalf of their dead. Okay, so again, reinforcing the idea that 70s are missionaries. Now, this is really interesting here. Okay, this is in volume 3 of Doctrines of Salvation, page 540. It's the start of chapter 8, the Holy Apostleship, nature of apostolic calling. What is an apostle? An apostle, the dictionary states, is, quote, one of the 12 chosen by Christ to proclaim his gospel. Also, a Christian missionary who first evangelizes a certain nation. Any zealous advocate for a doctrine or cause, end quote. We frequently hear a man spoken of as an apostle of some great undertaking because he was the pioneer in this particular field. The true calling of the apostles of Jesus Christ is to hold the fullness of the priesthood and to proclaim the gospel in all the world. They hold the keys to open the door by the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and first unto the Gentiles and then unto the Jews. In this dispensation, there is a reversal of this commandment given to the 12 in former days. Then they were commanded to go first to the Jews, then to the Gentiles. The Lord said, in the last days, the first should be last, and the last should be first. Since the restoration of the gospel, it has been carried to the Gentile nations, and soon it will be taken to the Jews. And remember what we read about this. It would seem that that's going to take place. There's going to be some that join the church before the second coming. Just go to my spreadsheets or look up times of the Gentiles. I've done a number of videos about this. But what we've read and studied is that when it goes to the majority of Jews, like in Israel, that's going to take place at the beginning of the millennium. Keep in mind that there are Jews scattered throughout all the world, just like there's the scattered 10 tribes throughout all the world. There's Jews here in America, they're in Africa, they're in South America. But when we're talking about Israel and the Jews there, it would seem that that time's not going to come until the second coming. But I'm not going to go over that right now. You'll just have to go check out my playlist or go to my spreadsheets or look up times of Gentiles on my channel. So the times of the Gentiles are about to be fulfilled, and the days of Judah are now at hand. Okay, two kinds of apostles distinguished. Now listen to this. The term apostle is recognized in the church in the sense in which it is defined in the dictionary. When men have been called apostles, who have been sent forth with the gospel message, even when they have not been ordained to the particular office. The 70s of the church are at times referred to as the 70 apostles because they are missionaries of the church and are sent out with the message of salvation and as witnesses for Christ into all the world, although they do not hold the office of apostle in the restricted sense. Okay, so in by one definition, particularly this dictionary definition, but also just uh, when you think about it in that way, they're apostles in that sense, but they do not have um, that is not their office. And he makes it clear later on. He says something that he quotes President Wilford Woodruff, 1856. Okay. In a discourse by President Wilford Woodruff, he spake, speaking to the brethren holding the priesthood, quote, "Let the 12 apostles and the 70 apostles and high priest apostles and all other apostles rise up and keep pace with the work of the Lord God, for we have no time to sleep. What is a man's life good for, or his words or work good for, when he stands in the way of men's salvation, exaltation, and glory? They are of no use at all." End quote. To think that President Woodruff believed and intended to convey the thought that there were apostles who were of the 12 in some of the 70s and some of the high priests is absurd. He merely desired to call attention to the fact that the men holding these offices in the priesthood were called to carry the gospel into the world as witnesses of its restoration, should be alert and alive to their great responsibility. So, just an interesting thing there. Okay. One last thing that I want to go through. This is Mormon Doctrine by Bruce R. McConkey and his entry for the 144,000. Okay, he says, "At his second coming, the Lamb shall stand upon Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads." These 144,000 are God's, as the name of their foreheads specifies. Their callings and elections have been made sure. They are exalted personages. Okay, now this is going into a completely different direction because if they are exalted personages, would assume that they're resurrected at this point. You don't gain exaltation until you're resurrected. I understand that he said they have had their okay, their callings and elections have been made sure, and they are exalted. So not only, I don't know, I don't know how you read this. I don't know. I can't tell if he's saying that okay, at this point they are now resurrected, they've received their exaltation, and therefore they are exalted personages. In previous to that, of course, they had their callings and elections made sure. I don't know, but let's just continue. They are they are redeemed from among men, and in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. They have attained perfection. These brethren, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, excepting for some unspecified reason the tribe of Dan, are high priests ordained unto the holy order of God to administer the everlasting gospel. For they who are ordained out of every nation, kindred, tongue, and people by the angels, to whom is given power over the nations of the earth, to bring as many as will come to the church of the firstborn. They are part of a great multitude which no man could number, all of whom shall have membership in the church of the firstborn, and therefore be exalted beings. So that's Bruce R. McConkey's explanation of it. Um, So, frankly, and with no disrespect toward any of these church leaders, it's confusing. It's confusing. If you try to make it all work together, on the one hand, we have Joseph Smith saying that the process has already started, that they've already started to call the 144,000. On the other hand, yeah, Bruce R. McConkey saying that it seems like it's going to be resurrected personages at the time that Christ comes, which I don't know, maybe both could be true. Maybe it's the 70s. Maybe it's also the apostles themselves. I don't know. Maybe it's the type of thing where it's just this group of church leadership, because a high priest is a church. It's a leadership position. It's an office that, as the name implies, it's a high priest, right? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I feel like there is something to what Joseph Smith said here about, you know, calling more 70s until you get to 144,000, which may simply be symbolic, but I don't know. So I don't mean to confuse everybody, but I do not think that the answer is, the 10 lost tribes are going to come from Hollow Earth, outer space, some other planet, whatever, and then they're going to be called and go on super missions, because that's one school of thought proposed by some. I don't think that's the case. Let's go back to the email. Okay, let's see what John says. Okay, so he continues. The question would then be, how many 70s have been called? Up until 1985, the total number of 70s were listed in the General Conference statistical reports. As of 1985, there were 33,000. And in 1971, there were 23,914. Okay, so like total going up to these years. So 85 had a larger number because more time had gone by since 1971. Okay. It would take more research to know how many became emeritus, how many died, how many were called, although many of them certainly would have served throughout this whole time range. The number is reported simply as how many were actively serving, like they report missionaries. This was during the time that the 70s functioned at a stake level, so there were a lot of them. Yeah, and here's another thing. The way that I read what Joseph Smith said about calling more 70s, I don't know if that's meant to be something that's throughout all time. Like, okay, for this dispensation, we stop once we get to 144,000, or if he was talking about at any given time, if there were so many quorums of the 70 called and it got up to the number of 144,000, that would be the limit. So there's a lot of questions here that I'm not sure that we have answers to. But maybe it does refer to all 70s during this dispensation. I don't know. All right, continuing. So considering how many there were then, and considering how many would have been called during the last 38 years, the number would certainly be higher. Let's say that each year there were on average 100 new ones called per year. Conservatively large number, I think. That would add about another 4,000. If we assume that between the beginning of the church to 1971, there were, say, another 10,000, again being conservatively large, we would only have totaled about 47,000, almost 100,000 short of 144,000. The idea that 70s, sorry, the idea that they are 70s would also fit in with the other things we know, can read about the 144,000. And there's a bullet point list. They are high priests, although this may not refer to the ecclesiastical office of high priest, but instead high priest as in actually uh, becoming such as per temple language. Yeah, well, or, you still, you guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that you still carry those offices with you as you progress in the priesthood. So, let's see, LDS offices of the priesthood. Just so that we can have a visual here. Okay, so this is talking about quorums. Well, okay, this will do. Okay, a bishop is also ordained a high priest, so he can preside over all members of the ward. A bishop is a judge in Israel. Okay, no. So these are the offices of the priesthood. And it's my understanding that as you progress, you still have all the duties and responsibilities pertaining to the lower offices and that you continue on. Let's see. So after elder, okay, the first office of the Melchizedek priesthood, then it goes high priest, and then patriarch, and then 70, and then apostle. Patriarchs are ordained by general authorities or by stake presidents when they are authorized by the Council of the 12 to give patriarchal blessings to members of the church. Okay, it doesn't really say. Anyway, I think that you would still, just like how the apostles and the 70s, they go by elder, right? So, like, you wouldn't say Apostle Jeffrey R. Holland or Apostle, uh, Dallin H. Oaks. Well, no, he would go by president, so that was a bad example. Apostle Quentin Cook, they go by elder. So it's like you still have those offices with you. So I think that you would still view 70s as high priests. Okay, so anyway, they are called from every nation, which, yes, they certainly are. They are special. In fact, let's go back to that Wikipedia article. Here you have South America, right? And you have a bunch of Spanish names. Unfortunately, you can't click on the names. They don't have their own individual Wikipedia articles. But I think it's a safe assumption that these 70s here in the ninth quorum of the 70s are probably from South America, right? Let's see, where's Africa? Yep, and in Africa you have a bunch of African-sounding names like Anthony M. Kaku, Pungwe S. Kongolo. So yeah, they certainly are called from every nation. The 70s are. They are special witnesses of the Savior, also effectively stated by Sister Nelson, as you know, when talking presumably about Adamonde Amen. Some of them having already started to being called at the time of Joseph Smith. Okay, some of them having already started to have been called at the time Joseph Smith said this. Yeah, and this is what we just read. So you can, it's in the History of the Church too. So you can find that quote in the History of the Church, Volume 6, page 196. And I think I already have that quote on my spreadsheet, by the way, but you can also find it in the Joseph Smith papers and see the original document right here. But yes, okay. I believe there were also 70s called in Jesus' time. Yeah, we just read about that. They too certainly would be included in that total. Well, I mean, presumably, we can't really say for sure. Perhaps the quote above was referring to the commencement of calling members of the 144,000 as being at the time of Jesus and not the time of the beginning of the restoration. Either way, the 144,000 would certainly include immortals. Well, yeah, based on what Bruce R. McConkey said, it seems like that could be the case, I suppose you could be selected while in mortality. So hence, at the time of Joseph Smith, he's calling people to be 70s, and maybe it also includes apostles. I have no idea. And then you are still considered part of that number once you become resurrected, and you're still. It could just be a number of like the leadership of the church, including 70s and apostles, and yeah. I don't really know. Okay, I suspect that they will be either translated or resurrected by the time they accompany the Savior and minister to the world when things really get close to the second coming. So having died a long time ago would be irrelevant, as it would be for any covenant keeper who would have died before the second coming. They will also get to be part of the things when it all goes down. Or up, laugh out loud. The first quote above by Joseph Smith implies that once 144,000 are called, that there won't be more called. Use of the word until. Yeah, and like I said before, I don't know if it's just symbolic, the way that 7 times 70 was symbolic when Christ was telling his apostles how many times they are required to forgive their neighbor. So I don't know if that's why that was put in there, because it could be like to help you understand the context of 144,000, that it's not literal, but it's like it's one of these symbolic numbers. I don't know. All right, continuing. I believe we are close to the second coming. If this is true, it would point to perhaps another more accelerated way of calling 70s, even calling 1,000 per year. Would take another 100 years, but who knows? Maybe my estimate count is too low. Cheers, brother. And then it's from John. So I'm sorry that I don't have more answers for everybody here, but we did gain this new bit of information. This idea that you keep calling 70s until you get to 144,000, either literally or symbolically. Don't know. Does it include all these different dispensations? No idea. It could. Does it include immortals? Bruce R. McConkey seems to suggest yes. Has the selection already started? Yes. According to Joseph Smith, while he was still alive, yes, the selection had already started. That's all I can really say. That's like the best that I know right now when it comes to the 144,000. I don't know if more will come to light later. Maybe there's other bits of information out there that have to do with the 144,000. If so, please feel free to send it my way. If it's Orson Pratt, I'll still look at it, but when it comes to these more fringy topics, he really liked to take a lot of liberty in interpreting things. So just, I don't know, keep that in mind if you're sending me something from Orson Pratt. But yeah, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.